It was midnight when those headlights sliced through the dark at the end of our gravel drive. Three big black trucks rolling in slow like they owned the road, engines rumbling just low enough to make your teeth rattle. I remember thinking, well, hell, this is how it starts, huh? There they were, men built like refrigerators with necks tattoos catching the porch light. One of them hollering, "Time's up, old man." The HOA muscle all high and mighty, standing right where my grandpa planted daffodils every spring. Inside, Grandpa didn't even flinch. Didn't look up from cleaning his old M1. Garan just muttered, "Gangsters." That's cute. I'll never forget the chill that ran up my spine the way he stood, old Marine jacket over flannel back, straight eyes hard. "Stay behind me, son," he whispered, voice low as thunder. "Let's remind him what a real homeowner's defense looks like." Now, before you start thinking this is some wild made-up story, let me just say, drop a comment and tell me where you're listening from, because what happened next, it'll make you believe in karma again, I swear. See, the Whitaker farm, our farm, was the kind of place you'd see on a calendar back when people still hung those up. 120 acres of rolling hills, old barns the color of rust, a pond clear enough to catch the sunrise. My grandpa Frank Whitaker started working this dirt when he was 16. He fought in Korea, came home, and grew this land out of stubbornness and hope. "The soil remembers who treats it right," he'd say. And when my dad passed, I left the city behind, traded a desk for blisters and a life where every sunrise felt earned. For a while it was peaceful, honest work, sweat and laughter, quiet dinners. Even the coyotes respected our boundaries. Until the day Silver Oaks Estates moved in across the ridge, a gated luxury community with pastel houses, fountains, and an HOA that called itself the pillar of order and community harmony. Grandpa called it Plastic Paradise. At first they seemed fine, all smiles and neighborly waves, wine tastings and barbecues. But that sweetness, it rotted quick. The rot showed up in envelopes, letters, neat cursive, always signed by Martha Whitcomb, president. First they said our barn was too close to their walking trail. According to county rules, it obstructed aesthetics. Grandpa snorted. "That barn's been here since Eisenhower. Their trail is 6 months old. Tell them to move their dirt path." I sent back a polite, firm letter, didn't matter. A week later, new complaints. The rooster's too loud. Cattle fence looks unsightly. Our irrigation line crosses HOA boundary. On and on, the same signature, Martha, always in pearls and pastel, always with that smile like she just sniffed a lemon. One afternoon, Martha herself pulled up in a white Lexus. I was fixing the gate, sweat in my eyes. She climbed out, clipboard in hand, and called Mr. Whitaker. "We need to talk about your land boundaries." Grandpa appeared, grease on his hands, didn't bother with pleasantries. "Do we?" She explained, voice sugary, that the HOA planned to expand the park by 40 feet. "Right into my pasture, you mean?" Grandpa said flat. "Well, technically the maps are ambiguous. If you just sign the easement, we'll maintain it. You'll still own it, technically." Grandpa leaned in, calm as a rock. "Ma'am, I fought in a war for this country. Didn't come home to surrender a single inch of it." Her smile thinned to a knife's edge. "I'd hate for this to get unpleasant." She left with her lawyers, her tires chewing up our gravel. That night, Grandpa sat by the window, mug in hand, watching the fields like he expected an ambush. They think kindness is weakness. Let's see how they handle boundaries they can't buy. Then the real harassment began. Spray-painted arrows on the grass, construction stakes driven into our dirt, a notice of construction sign hammered right by our gate. The county clerk shrugged. HOAs can file intent notices. Doesn't mean they can do anything. But someone started dumping old tires at our drive. A drone buzzed overhead every night, and one morning I found our mailbox ripped out, a note pinned to it. "Sell now before it gets worse." I wanted to call the sheriff. Grandpa just said, "Sheriff's a man with a badge." These folks need a reminder of something older than law: respect. He replaced the locks, fixed up the lights, put cameras everywhere, even hung a sign, "Private property trespassers will leave worse than they arrived." I thought it was overkill. He winked. "Sometimes you teach manners the old-fashioned way." But Martha wasn't finished. She came back flanked by 2 legal consultants. One had pain tattooed across his knuckles. The other had a gun bulging under his jacket. "Our patience is wearing thin," Martha said, syrupy sweet. "Sign the easement or the HOA will take action." Grandpa looked up, slow and steady. "Lady, you're about to learn what it means to take action on another man's land." She left. That night I found Grandpa pulling an old chest from under his bed, medals, a compass, and a notebook labeled Defensive Perimeter Protocol. He flipped through pages of diagrams and trap layouts, never looking up. "You think they'll really come?" I asked. "They already have. Just waiting for dark." Thunder rolled that night. Grandpa sat in the window, cigar burning slow. "What are you gonna do?" I whispered. He flicked, ash voice soft. "Teach 'em what happens when you mistake patience for surrender." And that's when it hit me. The HOA had rules, but Grandpa had principles. Out here on Whitaker soil, that made him the law. 3 nights after the storm, more headlights at the far fence, just sitting watching. Grandpa stood beside me, thermos in hand. "Don't move. They're measuring courage." After a minute, they rumbled off, but the tire tracks ran deep like a scar. Next morning, I found boot prints behind the barn cigarette butts near the fence. Contractor boots, steel toes, maybe worse, Grandpa muttered, but smiled. "They're sloppy." "Good." The mail brought a thick envelope, gold HOA logo, inside a letter. "Final warning. Cease resistance. Forced removal by legal and extra-legal means." Grandpa read it, slid it in his pocket. "They've gone and said the quiet part loud. Makes it easier for the sheriff later." He started working nights, hammering, wiring, setting lights and tripwires. When I asked what he was building, he said insurance. Word got around. Silver Oaks was reclaiming our property. Neighbors whispered the HOA was hiring private security. Dale, our mechanic, pulled me aside. "If they show up again, call me. I'll bring my camera." Grandpa smiled. "Don't worry, Dale. We're filming our own movie." That evening, Grandpa walked the property line with me as the sun bled orange over the hills. Every few yards, he checked a sensor, a wire, a spike hidden under soft dirt. Back in Korea, we learned to win before the enemy arrived. Not by killing, by preparing. These folks think intimidation is strategy. They don't know what patience with purpose looks like. The next 2 nights were too quiet. Even the coyotes kept their distance. Then, just past midnight, motion lights flared by the horse paddock. I grabbed a flashlight and ran barefoot, heart hammering. 3 men, one at the gate, one climbing the fence, one crouched by the generator. "Cut the power, then torch the feed shed. Make it look like an accident," one whispered. Before I could yell, Grandpa's voice boomed from the dark. Sun hit the switch. I slammed the breaker. Every light we had, barn lamps, LEDs, even old headlights, lit the night up like high noon. The trespassers froze. Then the sirens, a guttural howl from Grandpa's old grain silo alarm, blared across the valley. Horses. Panicked, the men bolted, but the ground gave way, and they tumbled straight into an old drainage ditch Grandpa had covered with loose boards and hay. "Welcome to the Whitaker Spa," Grandpa yelled, stepping out, flashlight in hand. "Free mud baths and humility lessons." I laughed even as my heart nearly exploded. Grandpa leveled his rifle just enough to freeze them. "Sit tight, boys. Sheriff's on his way." One tried to get clever, reached for a lighter and gas can. Grandpa fired not at him, but at the dirt by his boot. "Fire and farming don't mix, son. Maybe you'd know that if you'd ever grown something besides trouble." Sheriff's lights rolled in 12 minutes later. Deputy Collins, young and already exhausted, took one look and groaned. "Frank, what the hell did you do now?" Grandpa handed him the letter. "Trespass, attempted arson, and stupidity in the 1st degree. The men tried to claim they'd just been hired. She said it'd be easy. I knew who she was." Next morning it was everywhere. HOA hires thugs to intimidate elderly farmer, fails spectacularly. Our camera footage went viral. Some people laughed, some raged, but everybody agreed on one thing. Don't mess with Grandpa Whitaker. Martha tried to spin it, press conference blaming rogue contractors. But one of them talked, admitted she paid them, promised legal immunity. The HOA board panicked. Half resigned overnight. The others begged Martha to step down. She refused. "That old man humiliated me," she screamed at reporters. Grandpa, meanwhile, sipped lemonade on the porch. "They haven't even realized that was the polite version," he said. That's when I realized the war wasn't over. It was just changing shape. The battlefield moved to courtrooms, town halls, and the very meaning of ownership. The next day, a slick lawyer rolled up in a black Mercedes, sunglasses sharp as his tongue. "Mr. Whitaker, I represent Silver Oaks, HOA. My clients wish to de-escalate $50,000 and a public apology, and this goes away." Grandpa wiped his hands, stepped in close. "You want me to apologize for defending my own property?" The lawyer grinned. "Call it goodwill." Grandpa just shook his head. This farm isn't for sale, not the land, not my dignity, not even the dirt under your shiny shoes. The lawyer threatened lawsuits. Grandpa smiled. So is a war you can't win. When the car left, Grandpa dug up an old folder, deeds maps, handwritten surveys. See this, he said, tapping one page. Silver Oaks built their drainage line 12 feet onto our land. The park, the utility shed, 2 homes, they're trespassing on federal zoning terms. I nearly dropped the folder. Wait, you mean we don't have to fight their HOA rules? They're the ones in violation. We called Grandpa's old Army buddy Dale, now a retired surveyor. Dale confirmed that Silver Oaks was squatting on our soil. Grandpa grinned. Looks like they've been living rent-free. Dale smirked. You could sue them. Or better yet, charge rent. That night we posted a sign at their gate, Notice of Unpaid Occupancy. Portions of Silver Oaks are located on Whitaker property. Monthly land use fees now apply. By dawn, the neighborhood was buzzing. Martha flew up in her Lexus, screeching Frank Whitaker. What do you think you're doing? Grandpa didn't even look up. Collecting rent, ma'am. She threatened defamation, but he handed her the survey. Her face went white. This can't be right. Right enough that the county will back it, Grandpa said. Lawyers, surveyors, and PR folks swarmed Silver Oaks. But Grandpa had already sent the proof to the news. Next day's headline, HOA illegally built on veterans' land. The HOA board suspended operations. Grandpa went to their emergency meeting in his old Marine uniform, medals gleaming. Martha tried to bar him. He just spread out the maps. You tried to take what wasn't yours. Now you pay rent or move your fences. The board dissolved itself on the spot. When we walked out, neighbors clapped. Martha stayed inside, beaten. Back at the farm, Grandpa told me fighting doesn't always mean throwing punches. Sometimes you let people hang themselves with their own paperwork. I laughed, but there was truth in it. Because the lesson here, justice doesn't always look like a sheriff in handcuffs. Sometimes it's a deed, a survey, and the will to stand your ground. But you want a real twist. A few days later, the news broke. Martha had embezzled nearly 60 grand from the HOA. Money meant for landscaping and community events went straight into her pocket and her shell company. Now we knew what she was really fighting to protect. Within the week she was arrested, her husband resigned, and Silver Oaks HOA was suspended indefinitely. People started dropping by pies, thank you notes. Someone even made a mailbox that said, Home of the Whitaker Defense System. Grandpa just grinned. Standing your ground isn't about land, it's about dignity. Lose that you'll never get it back. But Silver Oaks didn't give up easy. Their developer filed a lawsuit, defamation, harassment, $2 million in damages. Grandpa's lawyer countersued, attached county audit records proving they'd destroyed wetlands during construction. Suddenly, the news called Grandpa a hero for exposing environmental crimes. Even the local paper ran small-town farmer outsmarts big city bullies. Reporters showed up. Grandpa gave one interview, told the world, if you want peace, respect property. If you want war, bring a lunch. It's going to be a long day. But fame. That wasn't what Grandpa wanted. He just kept fixing the fence, feeding the cattle, teaching me how to tell rain from the birds. Justice is the fence you keep true, the deal you keep fair, he said. When the county judge finally dissolved the HOA, Martha stood up in court, still blaming us for turning her neighborhood into a circus. Grandpa just shook his head, handed the judge a flash drive with every document, every message, every proof. The judge banged the gavel, awarded us damages, and ordered Silver Oaks dissolved. When we left, Grandpa said I didn't win. The land did. Funny thing, Martha's husband caught up to us in the parking lot. I'm sorry for all of it. She ruined everything. Grandpa shook his hand. You can rebuild reputation, son. Can't rebuild trust if you don't start with truth. That night, Grandpa sat by the pond, the moon bright on the water. He handed me his old compass. Every man needs to know where true north is. Mine was always this farm. Don't let yours be a screen or a dollar sign. As spring rolled in, the fields green again, the scars faded, and the land healed. And I realized this story, it's not just about winning or losing. It's about remembering what's worth fighting for. The soil remembers, Grandpa said, and so do we. You stand your ground not because you hate your enemy, but because you love what you're standing on. The HOA came with greed but left with humility. They arrived as conquerors and crawled away as students, and Grandpa, the last man standing, never had to raise his voice again. So let me ask you, where's your fence line? Where do you draw the line between power and principle, between what's right and what's easy? Have you ever had to stand your ground when it would have been simpler to surrender? Drop your stories below because trust me, every fence has its own tale. And sometimes the hardest battles make the best legends.
Cảm ơn các bạn đã xem video. Cảm ơn các bạn đã xem video.